Afrofuturism is a bit nebulous in some ways, right? It is this intersection of blackness with creativity and imagination and art and technology and an exploration of what it means to be of African descent living in a world that's been affected by colonization and global social politics and economics and finance, and trying to just make your way as black people in this world with all of these sort of outside influences, constraints, restraints, et cetera, et cetera. And to think about the folks who have stepped out, consciously or unconsciously, who have stepped out on platforms and explored what blackness is, right? There are so many things that can fall under the umbrella of what is Afrofuturism. But I think we all sort of come to this idea that it is about this exploration of the journey within, right, as folks from the continent, and the journey without, and what that journey looks like if we don't have restraints, what that journey looks like if we are able to just be free to sort of explore and find ourselves. And of course, that brings us to our subject this evening. But I think if you're going to kick off a series on Afrofuturism in the house of jazz, as we are, you have to do Wayne Shorter. And so when I think about Wayne Shorter, of course, we understand the genius of who Wayne is and who he was and who he continues to be. And we think about his expansive, understanding of melodic and harmonic structure and the fact that he pushed all of those things forward. Wayne Shorter is constantly living on this tightrope of the past and the tradition and things that haven't even been thought of yet, right? Things that have yet to come and have yet to materialize. There's this brilliant and beautifully made documentary on Wayne. It's a multi-series documentary. It's called Zero Gravity. And the series opens with this quote. Wayne Shorter says, "There are two important events in one's life, being born and knowing why." And that is Wayne Shorter's whole existence, is figuring out the why. And to me, that is Afrofuturism in a nutshell. Being black and roaming the earth, trying to figure out why, trying to figure out how and when and where and what. And in this documentary, he tells all these fabulous stories about how he grew up, and you hear his upbringing. You hear him talk about being really into comic books and being into these sort of, TV shows that were about mystery. And you find out that he's this great visual artist as well. He drew comic books when he was younger, and he loved the idea of superheroes. He loved the idea of challenge and adversity and overcoming challenge and adversity. And then you think about his music, and you understand that he is constantly on the search, because of course he comes to growing up in an age where he begins to hear bebop, and he talks in the documentary about how he starts to see Monk and Gillespie and Parker, right, as superheroes, because they were fighting this fight for this music that was like the underdog music, but it was really a music that was about social justice and freedom and expression at the highest level. So to me, Wayne encompasses so much of what we think of when we think of the Afrofuturistic sort of, ideology or philosophy or an actuation of what that might be. Before we get into this first song, a couple things that I think about when I think about Wayne. There's this great quote where Sonny Rollins talks about essentially how Wayne's music has no definition and no categorization, right? You can think of it as jazz, but by many metrics, it's not jazz. It's some other thing. I mean, if you just strictly think about jazz harmony, right? You go to college for jazz harmony and you get in Jazz Harmony 101, they're not going to talk about any Wayne Shorter harmony at all, right? So he is constantly thinking about and living in the tradition, but also expanding and reaching for some other thing. And then finally, before we get into this first tune, I'll leave you with, SFJAZZ's own Terrence Blanchard is in the documentary, and he has this really great quote. He says, "Wayne Shorter is a guy who is not bound by tradition at all." And to me, that is at the helm of the Afrofuturist sort of mantle, this idea of not being bound by tradition, not letting what has come before shape what we will then create as we move forward. This first song we're going to do is from an Art Blakey album from 1960, and this was when Wayne was a part of the Jazz Messengers. He was one of the newest members of the group at this time, but first of all, Art Blakey believed in composers, and he knew that he always had to have great composers in his band, and he knew that Wayne Shorter was something unique and something special. And so this comes from an album called The Big Beat, and Wayne Shorter idolized Lester Young. He loved Lester Young tremendously, the great saxophone player. When Lester Young dies in 1959, Wayne Shorter writes this composition, Lester Left Town. And it's featured on The Big Beat, which is a band that has Art Blakey, Lee Morgan, trumpeter, Wayne Shorter, of course, Bobby Timmons, the great pianist. You know, Wayne Shorter would be a tremendous force in every band that he was a part of, and no more so than to start his career with the great Art Blakey. So here we are, first tune of the night. This is Wayne Shorter's Lester Left Town. That's what I'm talking about. Please give a big round of applause for our featured guest for tonight, Mr. Marcus Steffens on the saxophone. On the piano, one of my favorite human beings and an amazing composer, musician, educator, songwriter, Mr. Art Koo. And the rhythm section of this band, the rest of the rhythm section of this band is made up of two performers who on any given night could be playing anywhere in almost any different style of music, but always holding it down. Two of the most consummate professionals and hardest working professionals in the Bay Area. First on bass, Mr. Gary Brown. And then finally, but list not finally, Mr. Dazon Claiborne on the drums. The next composition we're going to do is another tune that Wayne Shorter wrote while he was a part of the Jazz Messengers with Art Blakey. And this is a piece entitled Children of the Night. And it's from the Art Blakey record entitled Mosaic, which was released on Blue Note in 1961. And this features Wayne Shorter, trumpeter Freddie Hubbard, Curtis Fuller, the great trombonist, Cedar Walton on piano, talk about a monster piano player and someone who was way ahead of any musical curve and tradition you can imagine, the great Cedar Walton. Bassist Jimmy Merritt and Art Blakey, of course, on drums. Now, this record was released in 1961, and then Wayne Shorter would actually re-record Children of the Night in the 90s on an album that he wrote entitled High Life. And High Life would go ahead and win the Grammy in 1996 for Best Contemporary Jazz Performance. And this is a record where the tremendous producer, bass player, composer, all-around incredible musician, Mr. Marcus Miller, would actually do a lot of the arranging. He would conduct the orchestra. He would play bass on the record. Folks like keyboardist Rachel Z are on this album. David Gilmour, the great sort of fusion jazz guitarist. Lenny Castro, Airto, Will Calhoun, the drummer Will Calhoun, who's probably most notably known being from talk about another great Afrofuturist group, the rock band Living Colour, if you remember them. But we're actually going to take it back to the original recording that he did on the album Mosaic for Art Blakey in 1961. Again, one of my favorite Wayne Shorter compositions. This is Children of the Night. Dazon Claiborne on the drums. Marcus Steffens on sax. Art Koo on the piano. I have a lot of favorites of Wayne Shorter, but these next two are from this album that really, in many ways, signaled, I think, so much aesthetically and harmonically what Wayne Shorter was about. And the album is entitled Night Dreamer from 1964. And this album features this collection of, it's once again on Blue Note, and it features this collection of music that is bringing in such a unique and new and fresh voice and perspective to the music. And when you think about the rhythm section on this album, right, first of all, you have trumpeter Lee Morgan there with Wayne Shorter. And then you have McCoy Tyner, Reggie Workman, and Elvin Jones, all of whom spent a lot of time in John Coltrane's groups, famously on albums like My Favorite Things by John Coltrane. And we know Wayne Shorter is a visionary in many ways, but this album really sort of solidifies the fact that his writing is beginning to change. And he's beginning to think of music in a very different way. And he says himself, quote, he used to compose with a lot of detail. And now his approach began to have a more simplistic quality to it. He says, I used to use a lot of chord changes, for instance, but now I can separate the wheat from the chaff. In an interview with the great journalist Nat Hentoff, Wayne Shorter says, what I'm trying to express here is a sense of judgment approaching, talking about the composition Armageddon. And he says, judgment for everything alive from the smallest ant to man. I know that the sort of accepted meaning of Armageddon is about the last battle between good and evil, etc. But his definition was this idea of judgment to come and this period of total enlightenment in which everyone will discover what we are and why we are here. So you can see this through line in Wayne Shorter as a human being that really explodes into his music in many ways. This idea of exploration of who are we? What are we? Why are we here? What's the purpose? And what lies beyond the beyond, right? And thinking about that, of course, through the lens of a Black man who's making his way through, intensely tumultuous and violent and angry and horrific, sort of events that were going on all throughout the late 1950s and into the early 1960s in this country for Black people, right? Particularly for Black men. So he's doing all of this creation and imagination and imaginating and thinking and composing while being influenced and being sort of, within and surrounded by the boundaries of, intense racism, systemic, oppressive, hateful racism in this country. And so to me, so much of that is what is at the heart of Afrofuturism. This idea of exploring, of seeking, right? And the idea of doing that whilst in the skin that you live in and living in the world that you do and society that you do and whatever that construct may be, but creating this music that is not thinking about that, but is thinking about who the person is who's creating it and thinking about sort of this more grand idea of mankind and humankind and who are we and what are we and why are we here? And you can hear that exploration in the music. So here we go, Wayne Shorter's Armageddon. Marcus Steffens, tenor sax. Dazan Claiborne on the drums. Mr. Gary Brown on the bass. Art Koo on the piano. The next piece we're going to do is from the following year, 1965, and this is from an album that is considered by many people to be not only the greatest album in Wayne Shorter's career, but probably one of the best albums ever recorded on Blue Note. Now that's saying a lot. There's a lot of great albums recorded on Blue Note. But this album definitively changed the direction of the music that we know as jazz in many, many ways. And the album is Speak No Evil from 1965. Blue Note Records, it was the sixth album by Wayne Shorter on Blue Note. And this combines really elements of hard bop and modal jazz. It showcased the direction in which Wayne Shorter was headed with his own bands and also with the great mid-1960s Miles Davis groups that he also performed with, those classic groups with Tony Williams and Ron Carter and Herbie Hancock and Miles Davis, of course. This is an album that really sort of talks about this idea of a consolidation in many ways of Wayne's professional, compositional, and artistic excellence in his career. It's a thorough album. It's very consistent. It's wide-ranging. It really speaks as this kind of, in many ways, this musical manifesto for all of these various ideas that you can hear the seeds being planted for in albums going back to the late 1950s. And it's an album that, if you listen to it today, really does still sound as fresh and as interesting and as unique as it did then. Ben Ratliff, who's a jazz critic, included this album on his list of 100 most influential recordings. And he says something really interesting. He says, this is the first taste of a compositional style that would haunt jazz forever. Just about everybody playing jazz born in the 1950s and after that accepts Speak No Evil as its foundation. This album would define generations of jazz to come and has so many, every single song on this album, every composition is a miraculous work of art in many ways. And we are going to do the composition from Speak No Evil entitled Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum. For our final composition tonight, we're going to play a song from the album Schizophrenia. And this is an album 1967, also on the Blue Note record label. And this would feature 5 Wayne Shorter compositions and an arrangement by the great alto saxophonist and flautist James Spaulding. This features James Spaulding and Curtis Fuller once again on trombone, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Joe Chambers on drums. And this music really lives at the border between post-bop, right? We got bebop, we've got hard bop, we've got post-bop, right? This sort of lives at the border between post-bop, and if you know anything about jazz history, you think about that time frame. We think about the precipice that is avant-garde jazz or free jazz, Ornette Coleman, Charlie Hayden, etc., right? Living right on the edge of that coal train as he's moving through the mid-'60s and into the latter part of the '60s. So this music lives right there, right? And it's right at the border of, it has all of these great post-bop sensibilities to it, but it also has this sprinkling of where Wayne Shorter was going. And you can see some of this if you've ever listened to the great Miles Davis Plug Nickel recordings and where that band takes the music. They refer to that music as anti-music, right? Tony Williams, the great drummer Tony Williams, came up with this idea of playing anti-music, right? This music, to me, that also fits into this kind of Afrofuturistic mindset where he's on stage, he's in a suit, he's playing drums, he's in a traditional kind of jazz setting, but they are approaching the music in this new and visionarily creative way. And this album lives right at that intersection. We know that Wayne Shorter and others are going to, sort of burst through the doors into the avant-garde and free jazz scene shortly after this. But this particular piece of music and that configuration, when you think about those players, Curtis Fuller, if you've ever known any of his composition or his works, he is someone who's extremely imaginative and creative in his compositions. Of course, Herbie Hancock, we know all the work. If you've listened to any of the great Herbie bands from the late '60s, playing kind of more straight ahead or post-bop jazz, it is otherworldly in many ways. And this song fits right in that category. The other thing I just want to note is that for those of you that are, musicians in the room or people who, understand or appreciate or know music theory and music harmony, the music that we're playing is hard. It's really hard. I remember being in college and talking to a professor of mine and saying, bringing him a Wayne Shorter composition, right? And, maybe it was Speak No Evil, or maybe it was Fee Fi Fo Fum or something. And, when you're studying, composition and harmony, improvisation, I just said to him, look at these chords. Like, what do I play on this? And he's like, I mean, good luck with it. I mean, you can take some through lines. I mean, there are exercises you can do. You can like take all the chords and you can take all the chord tones that are similar between all those chords and create a new micro scale and blah, blah, blah. You can look at, these sort of, micro tonal centers and all these different things. But it's also like when you hear Wayne play, he's not playing scales. He's having a conversation. And that's what this music is. When you listen to these melodies, oh man, they're gorgeous, right? I mean, I'm a Wayne Shorter fanatic. I've played most of these tunes for a lot of my musical career. And when I started playing these songs again and thinking about them for this, I mean, you just leave wherever you are just singing all these melodies. They're so beautiful. They're so melodic. They're so singable. They have these beautiful natural phrases. And then the chords underneath are just a hurricane of like madness in terms of harmony, right? So just to say, it's been a lot of hard music we've been playing up here, and hopefully we've made it look not so difficult, but that's the beauty of Wayne Shorter. And if you want to get into Wayne Shorter's mind a little bit and live in his Afrofuturistic world, you got to go there. This is from the album Schizophrenia, and the composition is, one of my favorites, the great Tom Thumb. 1, 2, 1, 2. Marcus Steffens. Mr. Art Koo. Gary Brown on the bass. The man, the myth, the legend, Dazon Claiborne on the drums.
And now we are here as who we are, ready to scream again.
Hey everyone, Terrence Blanchard here. Thanks for watching and for your support of SFJAZZ at home. We hope you enjoyed the concert, and there's a lot more to watch right here, in addition to dozens more concerts available on demand. We've got a great Fridays live streaming schedule coming up. Most of these live streams will be added to the on-demand library within a week. We also have a bunch of new video series to check out. Drop the Needle, where we test the musical knowledge of artists with classic vinyl records. In My Mind, where you enter the mind of an artist while they improvise. The Breakdown, where artists break down a musical concept at 3 levels of difficulty. And Family Matinees, where the Bay Area's best musicians give kid-friendly concerts with a Q&A. Last note, if you dig the SFJAZZ at home experience, tell your people. Our mission is to bring this music to as many folks as possible all around the world. Again, thanks for your support, and stay tuned.